good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer, founder and CEO of Supplier Community, and we're here this afternoon to learn more about prioritizing the mobile grocery list builder with our friends from AdAdapted. And I actually had an opportunity to, I won't say interview, I had a great conversation with Molly McFarland, who's one of the co-founders and chief revenue officer for AdAdapted. She's here with us this afternoon. A couple things before we get started, though. If you are a Connect member, welcome. If you're not a Connect member, just remember our Connect membership is an all-access pass, all of our classes and events throughout the year, as well as access to our growing library of video on demand, any class that you might have missed or want to look at again. We're also Wednesday of a new leadership development program that's available exclusive to Connect members. So pay attention to what goes out via email. The second thing I'll say is if anyone, and you heard Molly and I talking about this a moment ago, but if you've got questions, don't use the chat button. Use the, either way, you'll get to us, but use the Q&A button and go ahead and submit those questions as you have them. If you've got them now, go ahead and submit them now. And then Molly can either take them as she sees them or hold off until the end. But thank you all so much for being here with us today. Molly, thank you to you and your team. You guys have been great partners, and it's been so exciting to learn more about you and about your business. And I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Excited to be here. Let me start by sharing my screen. And Matt, you just let me know if you can see it.
I can.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, like Matt introduced me, I'm Molly. I am one of the founders of AdAdapted, and we are a mobile ad platform that specializes in getting CPG products on mobile listing carts. And today we're not here to talk all about us, but we pulled some pretty cool insights that we've been gathering over the last year that are helping us understand how shopping behavior has changed and helping us understand what's to come in the future in a landscape that is evolving pretty quickly. So we'll dive into that pretty fast. I just want to give everybody a little bit of context about who we are so you can kind of place where we're getting this data from and why we exist. Just a quick overview, AdAdapted, we are headquartered in Ann Arbor. We're about 50 people. We have a presence across the country, and we do have a patent on our frictionless add to list, add to cart technology. We work with top CPGs and retailers, and the reason why they work with us is because we connect them to a very, very interesting, very valuable type of consumer, and that's the mobile list builder, and that's what we're going to talk about today. To go a little bit more into the agenda, for those of you that have already worked with us or that have heard us speak before, we'll reintroduce you. But for those of you that this is new for, we're going to introduce you to mobile list builders and show you why they're such an important consumer segment and why you should be paying attention to what they do and what trends they're revealing. We'll share with you what these mobile list builders have shown us over the last 12 months. Also provide glimpses into the insights they're giving us. Just in the last couple of months, we can see how their behavior has changed in 2021 and what it's indicating will come in the future. Okay, so let's start with who. Who is the mobile list builder? To dive into who they are, I think we have to talk just a second about lists and specifically mobile digital lists. So most Americans make some sort of shopping list before they go to the grocery store. Or now they make shopping lists even before they make Ecom purchases. Traditionally, this was done on a notepad or the back of an envelope, but just like everything else, shoppers have started to use their mobile device for the task. Also, I guess like everything else, they're increasingly turning to mobile apps to keep track of what they want to buy, whether it's InStore or Ecom. So really, mobile list builders include anyone that uses their phone to build out a shopping list. Some of these mobile list builders are using retailer apps, but a lot of them are using third-party apps. If you have any questions about that, we're happy to go into more detail, but basically, some third-party apps are a little bit more convenient and they're quicker. It's easier to jot things down. Sometimes it's a little easier to share with family members. But either way, we glean a lot from the lists they make. So we can see category and brand preferences. We can see retailer affinity. We can see timing of like when they're building shopping lists and when they're actually going in store. We also know where and when they're building out these lists. So the short answer here is everywhere. We see mobile list builders opening shopping lists at home, work, on the go, and of course, while they're navigating the aisles and choosing what they're going to put in their basket. Why they're important. So lists tell us a lot about people, what they'll buy, their affinity for specific categories and brands. And then we can see on a macro level what these shoppers are planning to buy across the country. So we can start anticipating trends and seeing changes or evolution months before what they're putting on their list turns into actual sales data that's published by the large measurement companies. And so let's keep going. So the data that we're about to look at is pulled from our private network of grocery list apps. Basically, AdAdapted takes our SDK and we put it into these mobile apps where people are building their lists. Then we can see, when people, what they're writing down, when they're writing it down, all the insights that we just sort of ran through. The data that you're about to see is normalized. So we're looking at an index so we can kind of make sense of all this data and normalize it across all these millions of shoppers across the country. You'll also see that the data reflects user behavior. So think about how you make a quick list at home. Even if you're not one of these mobile list builders, if you're just jotting things down on paper, you might not write out something like We by Yoplait or Hood cottage cheese with pineapple. Instead, you might just write down yogurt or French yogurt or cottage cheese with CHC or some shorthand to remind you of what to buy in store. So we have a data science team that sorts through millions and millions of these transactions and makes sense of it. So we can find the trends, we can find some meaning in the data that we're looking across all these apps and all these shoppers. The years that you'll see are 2019, 2020, and 2021. So it's kind of fun to see, 2019 seems to be the last normal year. Then we went into a year of COVID, and now we're starting to come out of that a little bit, but we can start to see how the beginning of the year is lining up to the past couple of years of trends. Okay, so let's jump right in. And if you guys have any questions about where this data is coming from or how we collected this data, just let me know. Again, you can put it in the Q&A, or we can address it at the end of the show, I guess. Okay, so let's start with ice cream. Last year was kind of a crazy year for ice cream, and it was our first real product that alerted us that something pretty nuts was about to happen as COVID started to take hold of the country. So starting in March 2020, what we see is ice cream on lists. So people jotting down ice cream, whether it was chocolate ice cream, strawberry ice cream, doesn't matter. We're kind of compiling all of the different ice cream that showed up on lists. And we can see that it shot up, right, way above anything that we had seen in 2019 or previous years even. And that's that green line right here shooting up. At the time, we were very surprised. It was March, it was still cold in most parts of the country. In addition to that, we were also hearing that things like birthday parties and barbecues and Easter was all being canceled. So when we're looking at this huge spike, we're scratching our heads of what does it all mean? How is COVID sort of driving what we're seeing in this data? What we quickly learned was about the role of comfort food in the pandemic. So we didn't know at the time. Now it's pretty well documented. And it was confirmed months later by Nielsen data and other sort of sales reports that yes, this was happening. That if you looked at what was happening actually in stores and what people were buying, it matched up perfectly with what we were seeing right at the onset of the pandemic in March, that what people were planning to buy was changing, and therefore what they did buy was going to change pretty significantly. However, with ice cream, what you see is it started to normalize. So after the summertime and going into the holidays, you see the same sort of spikes. People still sort of bought it for special occasions. But besides that, those trend lines really started to come together. And now we're seeing pretty much the same thing for 2021. So ice cream is one of those products that we're predicting will really even out and start to match what we've seen in previous years, and not stay elevated anymore. Following the same trend, here's another couple of items that saw spikes or saw elevation due to the pandemic. So what we're looking at here is a couple of products that are associated with things that you might normally buy in a restaurant. And since people aren't going to restaurants anymore, you can see that they changed as soon as the pandemic hit. So what we can see here with tortillas is that, whoops, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I just had my screen go dark. Bear with me, you guys. Small technical difficulty. Okay. Okay. And Matt, can you, if you don't mind being my tech support here just for a second as I try to launch this again?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Oops. All right, let's wing this. Okay. Share screen.
There it is.
There it is. Okay. Don't know what happened there. And it's one of those things where you are on Zoom all day, every day.
For sure.
still okay. All right. So when we're looking at tortillas and chicken nuggets, again, these are things that a lot of times you expect to be bought in a restaurant. And then as the pandemic rolled out, what we saw is people stopped going to restaurants, so they started to buy them in the grocery stores. And that's what led to these elevated levels on these graphs. As we're looking into 2021, what we see is they're staying elevated. So things have not gone back completely to normal. People are not going to restaurants yet. And what we can see here is that at the start of the new year, those trends are continuing. The same with sparkling water. So when you think of a substitute for soda and other things that people start to buy on the go or when they're running around, you can see that we saw elevated levels throughout 2020. Basically, we saw the beginning of the year lining up with 2019. And then right around March or about, let's say mid-March, April, you start to see sparkling water rise, and it stayed elevated pretty much all year long. And it looks like we're seeing even higher elevation as we go into 2021. So this is one of those products that really hasn't gone back to normal, probably won't go back to normal this year. And we're predicting that that will stay elevated throughout this year as well. And that is actually also backed up by sales data. So again, we're seeing this a couple of months early. And then when we're checking and matching it to the sales data that's being published, we can see that we're finding similar trends. Not every category experienced elevated levels, right? So where people do have to eat, they don't have to look really nice when they do it. And that's shown by more health, beauty, anything having to do with makeup or sort of like lotion, even deodorant and toothpaste. We've seen some levels drop there too. In this case, what we're looking at is lotion and makeup as being representative of these beauty categories. And we see that people just don't care about these items as much as they used to, or they're not buying them in grocery stores in the same way. So a couple of things here. We saw that there were lower levels throughout the year. Makeup took a sharp dive right around the time that the pandemic started to roll out and never recovered. You see these lines not even getting close to each other. What we have seen with sales data is this does line up. People did stop buying as many beauty products in 2020 compared to previous years, but that probably isn't the whole story. So what we saw is a deeper dip, a deeper drop than just 17%. And what we're realizing is, even though these are shoppers that are going in store, they're making their list to go in store, they might not be buying everything there. So we do see that beauty as a category has dropped pretty significantly, but we also see that beauty products being bought, in person has taken an even more significant drop. And what we're realizing is that a lot of these people are turning to Ecom for products that are non-perishable, products that have longer replenishment cycles, so they don't need it every week. It's not a big deal if they don't buy it right away. They're turning to online stores, whether it's Amazon or others, to buy these beauty products. Okay, a couple other items that have taken a big hit include things that are associated with on the go. So here we have bars, which really indicates granola bars, protein bars, other sort of snack bars that people are buying when they're running around to have a quick meal replacement or a quick bite. You can see here that as soon as the pandemic rolled out, kids stopped going to school. There's no more granola bars in lunches. We saw this huge dip. It started to get back to normal a little bit. At least the trends started to line up a little bit towards the end of the year. However, we're still seeing a decreased level, pretty much lining up with what we saw for most of 2020 for early 2021. So we're predicting that that will stay low until people really start getting back to normal and kids start going back to school and behavior starts evening out. Same thing with gum. So we don't see a ton of gum on lists anyway, and that's probably because it's an item that people are usually just grabbing on impulse. And people just, especially they don't care about breath as much when you're just on Zoom calls all day. So what we're seeing here is same thing. When the pandemic rolled out and people didn't have to go to work, they don't have to see colleagues or friends or impress anybody, any strangers when they're on the go. We saw that decrease in gum, and that decrease has stayed with us. So it's just not a planned purchase pretty much at all anymore. And we do see about a 10% drop in sales. This one was interesting, and we only have a couple more, I believe. So dog and cat food. What has been well documented is people did not get rid of their pets during the pandemic. Thank God they held on to their dogs and cats, and have been taking care of them very well. And a lot of people are actually going out and buying pandemic pets. But yet we're seeing lower instances of these products showing up on lists. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is stockpiling. So we did see people right at the turn of the pandemic spike in buying cat food and dog food. There was a lot of fear back in early March. People didn't know what would be available. They didn't know if they would be able to buy these products or have them accessible. So they went out and they bought a lot of them very quickly. After that, we see that the lines dropped pretty significantly. So one thing that happened is they had a stockpile of dog and cat food and didn't need to replenish very often. Two, this is another product that are seeing a lot of success online. So Smuckers is saying that they've seen an increase in sales for dog snacks, even though we're seeing a decrease of people putting it on their list. And that's kind of made sense with the data that's showing that about 71% of pet owners are saying that they're ordering and buying more online. So you're starting to see this new hybrid consumer, this consumer that is still going in store, but maybe not as often. And they're looking for alternatives, but just for certain types of products. And that's reflected in the lists that they're making for offline purchases. Same thing with Kleenex and toilet paper. It was fun when we first did this webinar, I think back in last summer. This was a really hot topic. I think it's been pretty well covered, so I won't go too far into it. But we see similar trends with Kleenex and toilet paper. So huge spike right off the bat. Everybody was terrified that they wouldn't be able to buy these products anymore. However, as time went on and these could not be found in store, and people already had their stockpiles at home, you saw lower instances of them being on these offline grocery lists. And we're continuing to see that trend well into 2021. Okay, so that's all the raw data that we have. We do have a couple of insights, a couple of things to talk about as marketers are going into 2021. We've been having conversations with different brands and are getting an understanding of what they're thinking about and what's driving some of their questions and some of their decisions for the coming year. So first, let's talk about what will happen in store versus ecom. I think we touched upon this a lot in the previous graph. But basically, I think we're going to see a big return to in-store. It's not going to be everybody, but about 78% of shoppers say they plan on shopping in-store more in 2021. I think a lot of people are surprised by the fact that they miss it and they miss the experience of actually going and picking out their produce or picking out new items. So they will come back and we will see more people navigating the aisles in that way. One of them is just because they feel safer and they miss it, or one of the reasons. But another reason is a lot of consumers have found that ecom is not a perfect solution for them. It is well known that ecom has exceeded all expectations. I think you will see a lot of shoppers that never go back. They really, really are enjoying the ecom experience and the convenience of having either click and collect or delivery options. But it's not a perfect solution, and a lot of consumers are expressing dissatisfaction with the options that they have today. So that's in combination with feeling safer, I think you're going to see people going in store and maybe using ecom a little less, even if they are an ecom shopper. And then the one that has everybody sort of scratching their head and thinking, and we're watching this super closely in terms of the list activity we see across the country and comparing states that are opening up versus states that are still locked down, is just how much are people shopping in general. So even if people are going in store more or they're buying ecom more, we are trying to understand, are they buying more groceries total and how will that shift? So you see the major chains coming out and saying, hey, people are going to go to restaurants more. They're going to start buying some of these items while on the go versus in a planned grocery purchase. So we do expect to see a little bit less shopping, period. We're also looking at specific habits and trying to understand what is temporary and what's going to stick with us. So we do believe that people are going to start buying those beauty and appearance-based products again. So whether it's makeups and lotions and other beauty items. We believe that will go back to normal in some ways, that people will start buying more of these products in grocery stores. Although once the habit has been built where people can get some of these products online, maybe they have it scheduled as an ecom purchase, I think that you'll see some increase back on grocery, but it won't go back to normal. Once that switch is made, we've seen this a lot. Once somebody finds that they can buy something either cheaper or easier or more conveniently online, they might take it out of their normal grocery cart and start just buying that as an ecom purchase. What we will see though is people cooking less and having more dinners out. So I don't think I have to go too far into that. All the data that we're looking at, even what we see on lists, is as people start to have safer experiences and as they're able to go out more, we see people stopping with all the baking and cooking items and then supplementing that with being out and about at restaurants. And a couple of habits that could be here to stay. So we do think that people will be brand loyal to some of the discoveries that they found in 2020. So something like 62% of consumers made brand changes during the pandemic and plan on making some of those permanent. There was a lot of trial. There were a lot of people that totally were pulled out of their comfort zone and had to try new products. Maybe they were out of the products that they're used to buying, or maybe price became more of a sensitivity. For whatever reason, after weeks and weeks of trying something new, they might not be ready to go back. So we're watching, we have a lot of data about people making that shift early on. shifting from one type of product to another. And now what we're watching is as people's behavior changes again, will they return to those products? And then the other thing is we still expect to see some new trial. So what we're fascinated by is when somebody goes from just in-store, they move over to Ecom, they're trying new products, now they're in-store again, and the aisles are lit up and they're seeing new product packaging and they're seeing new marketing messages, they will be pulled into trying new things again. I think it'll be a really interesting time both for retailers and CPGs to watch this unfold and see how these shifts affect their own products or their own categories. So again, we'll be watching our lists closely and trying to see this months before the sales data is available. Some of the other things that marketers that we're talking to are thinking about is what does this mean for their marketing and advertising spend? It's, you know, a lot of people are talking about how things have to change. If everything in the shopper journey has changed, their own spending should change and their own strategies should change. But now they're thinking about what those should be, and it's hard. So one thing that hasn't changed very much is marketers are still putting most of their dollars or their CPG marketing dollars into awareness. 80% of marketers rely on general awareness advertising, even though 77% say they don't have an effective way to measure it. And because of what's going on, we're seeing 93% of these CPG leaders saying that they wish that they had a way to get closer to when people are planning their purchases. So when people can get on lists, or sorry, when people are making their shopping lists. But a lot of them said that they don't have the ability to do that. I should have backed up. But this is all being pulled from a large study that we recently helped with. We're really trying to wrap our heads around what marketers are thinking this year. So we worked with Callan Consulting on getting 200 CPG retailer and marketing, or CPG marketing and advertising leaders to tell us what their challenges are going into this year. And how they're planning on solving it. And these are some of the quick tidbits that we got from that study. Would love to share the whole study with you. It's pretty fascinating. Gave us a lot of insight into what's to come. So just let us know if that's something that you'd be interested in. And then finally, what we were happy to see too is more and more marketers are understanding that these lists are really important to them. Not only understanding what's happening in the pre-shop phase, but also getting their products on the list, whatever the list that might be. So whether it's an e-com list, whether it's an in-store list, consumer habits are changing so quickly that it's important for your product to be wherever consumers are planning to use on shopping. Again, we can't predict their habits perfectly, but as long as your product is on every list that they're turning to, you're in a pretty good place. And that's it. That is the presentation. And thank you so much for bearing with me during the technical disruption. That is embarrassing, but I appreciate you guys sticking it out. So can I answer any questions?
Yeah, good stuff, Molly. I've been in the shopper marketing business, gosh, 20 some odd years now, more on the experiential side. And, you know, the two keys, at least from my perspective, historically have been how do you leverage some sort of investment to gain incremental display space, thinking that, you know, the more places in a store the shopper interacts with your product, the more likely it is on impulse to end up in your basket. And then obviously, the holy grail is how do you get on the list so it's a part of the planned visit. So exciting to see what you all are doing, especially as, and we're going to be talking about this in a few weeks, the idea that retailtainment, you know, if it comes back at all, is not going to be what it once was. And retailtainment has been traditionally the most kind of popular currency, if you will, for purchasing that display space in store. A couple of questions have come in. You probably can see them. My friend Michael Day. Michael, great to see you. His question, and I'm not sure I understand this. Maybe you will, Molly, and if not, we'll ask him to explain it. But his question is about new hybrid consumers, hybrid consumers, one, two, or three of the most material takeaways around this for retailers in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I think it depends on the category and the product. So what we have been doing is we've been analyzing our list. And honestly, at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought that it was trying to identify who are the people that are still shopping in store and who are the people that are moving to e-com. But Michael, the data shows that it just wasn't that easy, right? That and if you look at your own habits, and I can see it clearly in my own household, what ended up happening is I still buy a lot of things in store, but started to move some items to e-com. And so we're looking through all these lists and we're looking through millions and millions of transactions or activity where people are jotting things down. And you can see even people that go to the store every week are buying some things consistently, and they're peeling off things that seem to be the non-perishables or the things with long replenishment cycles, and they're starting to buy those things elsewhere. We're helping some of our clients make sense of that, and how do you target advertisements? What is the goal? Should it be to get on an e-com list? Should it be to get on a in-store list, and navigating that basically category by category. So I think the takeaway, I wish I had just let me explain what 2021 will look like there. I think it's more, let's talk about a specific product. Let's talk about the data we see, and then start talking about a marketing or advertising strategy to address the trends that are starting to reveal themselves. I hope that was helpful. That's kind of a non-answer, but
great.
Okay.
Our friend Pam asks, what is the penetration with respect to grocery list apps versus building lists within the retailer sites themselves?
That's a really hard one, mostly because the retailers don't necessarily share the data, exactly how many people are using their apps on a given basis. What we have seen is we have about 110 million profiles of people that we have seen touch our lists at some point, who are downloading the list, using them in some way. We've seen that there's some overlap just in third-party data, that sometimes people will use one of our lists, which more resemble a notepad sort of experience of jotting things down, versus the Walmart list, which they might use to find deals or coupons. Another way to answer your question, Pam, though, is what we're seeing, sort of, rising tides rise all boats, right? Rising tides lift all boats. With the pandemic hitting and people needing to keep track of their purchases or starting to move to e-com, we saw apps across the board that touch this world start to be downloaded more. So I have a graph somewhere that shows Walmart, Amazon, Instacart, a couple other ones. People just started downloading those apps to their phone, and they started rising, 200, 300%, where people were downloading them. From our own data, we can see the same thing started happening with these offline lists. People were saying, okay, I need to keep track of new purchases. I got to be in and out. I have to be really organized. I can't go in and peruse the aisles anymore. I have to know what I'm going to get. And they started to be more active in these offline lists as well.
All right. Well, Molly, I know Drew is on, and it's my assumption that if anyone wants to learn more about AdAdapted, and specifically ways that they can engage your team to help grow their business with Walmart and other retailers, Drew would be the contact. Would you mind to share his contact information, or any other means that you would prefer folks to engage your company?
It's just D Clemens. His name is Drew Clemens, and it's just D Clemens at AdAdapted.com. So
yeah, very, very good, very good.
So
well,
sorry again
thank you.
about the technical. I think
not
I
at all.
Right red, so I apologize for that. But thanks for sticking with me.
No worries. Thank you again for making the time, and your team and you have been such great partners. Molly and I actually had, as I alluded at the beginning, a conversation called Conversations on Retail. One of our episodes, if you will, was with Molly, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. But I had so much fun, learning more about you and about the business. And anybody that's interested in kind of hearing a great story of entrepreneurship and starting from nothing, building something pretty stinking amazing, I would encourage you to watch that video. But Molly, again, thank you to you and your team for making this time. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.